When my mother, the CEO of a billion-dollar empire, looked me in the eye and called me useless in front of her entire board, I stayed silent. What she didn't know was that in my bag sat the evidence of her crimes, bribes, offshore accounts, everything. And at that very meeting, I was going to expose her. By the time I finished, the woman who mocked me all my life would lose her company, her power, and her legacy forever. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to our channel and leave your comments. The words rang across the marble-floored dining room like the crack of a whip. Useless, my mother said, her lips curled in a cold, practiced sneer. That's all you are, Evelyn. A charity case in designer clothes. The room was filled with the glint of crystal glassware and the muted hum of the city through the high-rise windows, but in that moment, all sound collapsed into silence. Even the servers paused mid-step, eyes flickering toward me, then away again, as though afraid to be caught witnessing the humiliation. I didn't reply. I didn't flinch. I didn't even put down my fork. Because if I had, she would know she had gotten to me. Instead, I raised my eyes and met hers. My mother, Eleanor Hale, CEO of Hale and Worthington International, the woman whose signature could raise or crush fortunes on Wall Street. Her diamond earrings caught the chandelier's light as she took another delicate sip of Bordeaux, perfectly composed after delivering the insult that had left the table trembling. My sister, Cassandra, gave a soft laugh, hiding it behind her manicured hand. Mother, don't be too hard on her. Evelyn's just different. Different. Another word for failure in their vocabulary. I placed my napkin gently on the table, stood up, and excused myself. Inside, though, my blood burned. Our family dinners were always like this, ritualized performances rather than gatherings. The penthouse dining room wasn't for food, it was for spectacle. It was where Eleanor staged her dominance before her children, her executives, her sycophants. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the glittering Manhattan skyline, but inside, the light was sterile, cold, every detail screaming of money without warmth. Silver-framed photographs lined the walls, portraits of Eleanor with presidents, CEOs, international dignitaries. Never with us, her children. I had been back under her roof for 3 months, a temporary stay after finishing a postgraduate program abroad. She had offered, with the faintest air of benevolence, to let me get my bearings. In truth, she wanted me close enough to remind me daily of my inadequacy. But I stayed, because I was patient, because I knew things she didn't. By day, Eleanor ruled the glass fortress of Hale and Worthington's headquarters, a 50-story tower overlooking Midtown. The office lobby gleamed with marble, brass, and a waterfall installation no one ever stopped to admire. Her board of directors, mostly older men in tailored suits, hung on her words, dazzled by her vision, terrified of her wrath. I watched from the edges, silent, unnoticed. She never introduced me as her daughter, only as Evelyn, she's between things right now. Always a dismissal. But while she ignored me, I listened. The corridors of power have cracks if you know where to look. The whispers of assistants in the break room. The hurried, nervous exchanges of mid-level managers. The financial analysts who spoke in hushed tones about irregularities in subsidiary accounts. It was there, in the muted gray of the corporate archives and digital files I shouldn't have had access to, that I began to see the outlines of a scandal, one that could topple the queen of the glass tower. People assumed I was weak because I didn't fight back. They mistook silence for surrender. But silence has its own power. At night, in my mother's penthouse study, where leather-bound books and framed Wall Street Journal covers proclaimed her greatness, I searched. She never imagined I'd look. After all, I was useless, wasn't I? Her desk drawers held more than contracts. Receipts from private trips billed as corporate research. Offshore account printouts under the names of shell corporations. And then, most damning, a hidden ledger, handwritten in her neat, decisive script, tracking payouts that could only be described as bribes. The deeper I dug, the clearer the picture became. Eleanor Hale wasn't just a ruthless CEO. She was a criminal in couture. And she had mocked me into action. It was another board dinner when she pushed too far. I had joined reluctantly, sitting at the far end of the table as she held court. The boardroom dining hall overlooked the city like a throne room, mahogany table gleaming, the men around her laughing too loudly at her witticisms. Halfway through, she turned her gaze to me. "Evelyn," she said, voice sharp as glass, "tell us, what exactly are you doing with your life these days? Still dabbling? Still waiting for the world to hand you purpose?" The room chuckled, following her lead. I felt the old urge to shrink, to disappear. But instead, I let the silence stretch, then replied evenly, "Some things take time, Mother. Unlike shortcuts through offshore accounts." The laughter died instantly. Her eyes froze. For the first time, I saw something rare, uncertainty flickering beneath the polished mask. She recovered quickly, laughing, waving it off. But I noticed the tension in her shoulders. I had drawn blood. If Eleanor was the queen, Cassandra was her heir apparent. Perfect grades, perfect fiancé, perfect position waiting at the company. She wore her ambition like perfume, suffocating and sweet. She, too, saw me as little more than a nuisance. But she also underestimated me. One night, Cassandra cornered me in the hallway of the penthouse, glass of champagne in hand, eyes glittering with cruelty. "You know, Evie, you'll never belong here. You're too soft, too idealistic. This world eats people like you alive. Better you accept it now." I didn't answer, just smiled faintly, the way one does at a child reciting something rehearsed. But that night, I copied her laptop drive while she was out. What I found there sealed my resolve. Emails. Correspondence between Cassandra, my mother, and certain politicians. Discussions of contracts exchanged for donations. Cassandra wasn't just complicit. She was being groomed to inherit the empire of corruption. The family legacy wasn't power. It was rot. By now, I had assembled a mountain of evidence. Enough to trigger federal investigations, tank the company's stock, and destroy reputations permanently. But evidence means nothing without timing. And timing, in Eleanor's world, was everything. The board's quarterly meeting was approaching, a spectacle where shareholders and directors gathered to review performance and set direction. Eleanor always emerged from these meetings invincible, her legend burnished anew. But this time, it would be different. The night before the meeting, Eleanor summoned me to her study. She stood by the window, city lights flickering behind her, a silhouette of authority. "I hear you've been asking questions," she said calmly, too calmly. Her voice carried no anger, only the cold precision of someone accustomed to control. "You think you're clever, Evelyn. But cleverness without discipline is self-destruction. You will stop now." I met her gaze, steady, unblinking. "And if I don't," her lips curved in that familiar cruel smile, "then you'll prove what I've always known. You're nothing. And nothing has no power." I left without answering. But as the elevator doors closed, I whispered to myself, "Tomorrow we'll see." The morning of the board meeting dawned clear and cold. The headquarters buzzed with energy, suits and briefcases converging like armies before a battle. Cameras flashed in the lobby as Eleanor swept in, regal in her navy dress and pearls, every inch the untouchable CEO. I walked 3 steps behind her, invisible, unnoticed. Exactly where I wanted to be. Inside the glass-walled boardroom, directors settled into high-backed chairs, papers rustling, screens glowing with quarterly figures. At the head of the table, Eleanor took her seat, confident, commanding. Cassandra hovered beside her, already rehearsing her role as the golden successor. I slid quietly into a corner chair. A courtesy seat, nothing more. No one expected me to speak. But they would, because in my bag rested the evidence. Files, emails, ledger copies, enough to burn the empire to ash. And I intended to use them. The boardroom smelled faintly of polished mahogany and burnt coffee. A dozen directors sat in their tailored suits, murmuring amongst themselves as assistants prepared slides and charts. The skyline behind them shimmered, indifferent to the drama about to unfold. At the head of the table, Eleanor Hale radiated authority. Perfect posture, calm hands folded, her diamond watch glinting as she welcomed the room. She lived for these moments, the spectacle of command, the illusion of invincibility. Cassandra leaned in beside her, whispering something, both of them sharing the same confident smile. Their empire felt secure. But I knew better. The files in my bag seemed to burn with weight. Pages of falsified invoices, proof of offshore accounts, Emails that tied Eleanor and Cassandra directly to politicians and corporations and backroom deals. Evidence so damning it could collapse not just their reputations, but their very freedom. And today it would all come to light. The meeting began predictably. Eleanor launched into a soaring monologue about growth, innovation, the unshakable integrity of Hale and Worthington. Charts projected behind her showed upward trends. Applause filled the room, dutiful and rehearsed. Then came Cassandra's turn, presenting a polished vision of the future, her voice steady, her tone crisp. She spoke of expansion into emerging markets, of sustainability initiatives, of legacy. Her eyes flicked toward me briefly, a subtle smirk tugging at her lips, as though daring me to contradict her. I didn't move. Not yet. When the floor opened to questions, one director, Mr. Reinhardt, silver-haired, stern, cleared his throat. "There have been rumors," he said carefully, eyes narrowing. "Whispers of irregularities in subsidiary accounts. Perhaps you'd like to address them, Eleanor." A hush fell. Eleanor smiled and faltered. "Unfounded gossip," she replied smoothly. "Every account is audited, every transaction transparent. Our competitors would love nothing more than to sow doubt. But we remain beyond reproach." The directors nodded, reassured, but I saw the faintest tightening around her eyes. She knew the cracks were showing, and I was ready to widen them. As the meeting shifted toward closing remarks, I stood. My chair scraped the marble floor, sharp and deliberate. Heads turned, surprised. Eleanor's gaze snapped to me, I see. "Sit down, Evelyn. This isn't your arena." But I didn't sit. Instead, I reached into my bag, pulled out a folder, and laid it flat on the polished table. "With respect, Mother," I said, voice calm, steady. "If this is the arena of truth, then perhaps it is exactly where I belong." A murmur rippled through the room. Eleanor's smile was brittle now. "This is highly inappropriate." I flipped the folder open. Pages spilled out across the table. Copies of wire transfers. Invoices to companies that didn't exist. Handwritten notes. Her notes, documenting payouts to politicians and regulators. "Inappropriate," I said softly, "is charging bribes to offshore accounts while shareholders are told the books are clean." Silence. Then gasps. One director snatched up a page, eyes scanning rapidly. Another leaned forward, his face blanching. Reinhardt's jaw tightened as he read line after damning line. And Eleanor finally lost her composure. "You don't know what you're talking about," she snapped, rising to her feet. Her voice no longer smooth, but sharp, venomous. "These are fabrications. Lies." "Are they?" I slid another document forward, an email chain between her and Cassandra discussing a senator's support fee. "Because I made copies of your correspondence, too. Passwords are easy to guess when they're just the names of your yachts." A ripple of uneasy laughter broke out. Not at humor, but at the audacity. Cassandra's face drained of color. "You? How dare you invade my privacy?" I turned to her slowly. "You were being groomed to inherit this. Did you think no one would notice the trail you were already leaving? Your fingerprints are all over it." Her mouth opened, then closed, eyes darting helplessly toward our mother. The Queen and her heir were cornered. Reinhardt spoke first, voice heavy with disgust. "Eleanor, are these genuine?" Eleanor's hands trembled just enough for me to see. "This is an attack, a betrayal by my own daughter. She has always been unstable, always jealous. You can't believe her." But I cut her off. "Believe me? Don't. Believe the auditors I've already sent these files to. Believe the journalists who will be running this story by tomorrow morning. Believe the federal agents who, as of 10 minutes ago, received everything in digital form." Every head turned toward me, and I stood calm, steady. Every word deliberates. This company has thrived on fear and illusion, but illusion only lasts until someone dares to look closer. I looked, and now you all see. The directors erupted questions, shouted, accusations hurled. Some demanded explanations, others called for immediate suspension. The room spun with chaos, but in the center of it, Eleanor stood frozen, her empire crumbling around her. She turned on me then, fury blazing. "You ungrateful child, do you think this will make you powerful? You are nothing without me. Nothing." Her voice cracked. Her control was gone. and I simply looked at her, unflinching. You made me invisible, Mother. And invisibility is the best disguise for gathering truth. She lunged forward, as though to tear the documents from the table, but Reinhardt's hand slammed down, pinning them in place. His voice was iron. Eleanor Hale, effective immediately. I am calling an emergency vote of no confidence. The directors raised their hands one by one. Against her. Her reign ended in less than 5 minutes. But the downfall didn't stop with Eleanor. Cassandra tried desperately to salvage her position. I didn't know, she insisted, voice shrill. It was all her. Mother handled everything. I just followed instructions. I dropped the final page onto the table. Her emails, her signatures, her eager complicity. You wanted to inherit the throne, Cassandra. Now you'll inherit the investigation. Her face crumpled, mascara streaking as she realized the truth. The directors turned from her too, disgusted. She was finished before she had even begun. Security escorted Eleanor and Cassandra out of the building. Cameras outside swarmed as word leaked. Reporters shouted. Flashes lit up the lobby. The Queen of Hale and Worthington, the untouchable CEO, was reduced to a figure shielding her face, dragged away under the weight of scandal. Inside, the board turned to me. Some thanked me. Some resented me. But all recognized me. For the first time, I wasn't invisible. That night, I stood alone in the penthouse study, the same room where Eleanor had once told me I was nothing. The bookshelves loomed, the city lights blinked through the glass, but the room felt different now. On the desk lay the remnants of her empire. Files, ledgers, relics of corruption. I gathered them into a box, sealed it, and set it aside for the investigators. Then I poured myself a glass of wine from her prized collection and sat in her leather chair. The silence was profound. Not the silence of suppression. The silence of victory. The story hit headlines worldwide. Hale and Worthington, CEO ousted in scandal. Eleanor Hale faces federal investigation. Stock prices plummeted. Politicians distanced themselves. Partners severed ties. Eleanor and Cassandra vanished into disgrace, their names synonymous with greed and downfall. Trials awaited. Legacies shattered. And me. I wasn't celebrated as a hero. Not in the way movies promise. Some saw me as a traitor, others as a whistleblower. But none saw me as useless. And that was enough. Because in the end, revenge isn't about applause. It's about balance. And finally, the scales had tipped. If you like my story, please like the video, subscribe to our channel, and share it with as many people as possible. Thanks for watching.